हेलो दोस्तों, बिजनेस पॉइंट में आपका स्वागत है। और अभी हम कर रहे हैं इकोनॉमी। ठीक है। इससे पहले जो भी करा है वो सब प्लेलिस्ट में वो कर दिया है सेव, तो जाकर आप देख सकते हैं। ठीक है। शिफ्ट्स इन डिमांड एंड सप्लाई, अब ये स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं। इन द अव सेक्शन वी स्टडीड मार्केट इक्विलिब्रियम अंडर द assessment that tastes and preferences of the consumers. Prices of the related commodities, incomes of the consumers, technology, size of the market, prices of the inputs used in production, etc. remain constant. However, with changes in one or more of these factors, either the supply or the demand curve or both may shift, thereby affecting the equilibrium price and quantity. Here, we first develop the general theory which outlines the impact of these shifts on equilibrium and then discuss the impact of changes in some of the above mentioned factors on equilibrium. Demand shift. Consider figure 5.2 in which we depict the impact of demand shift when the number of firms is fixed. Here, the initial equilibrium point is E, where the market demand curve D0 and the market supply curve S0 intersect, so that Q0 and P0 are the equilibrium quantity and price respectively. ये फिगर है पूरे, इसमें जो अभी देखा है प्राइस क्वांटिटी Q0 डबल डैश यहाँ पे है P0. Shift in demand. Initially the market equilibrium is at E, मतलब कि यहाँ पे. Due to the shift in demand to the right, the new equilibrium is at G, means इधर, as shown in panel A, and due to leftward shift, the new equilibrium is at F, as shown in panel B. With rightward shift, the equilibrium quantity and price increase, whereas we leftward shift, equilibrium quantity and price decrease. Now suppose the market demand curve shifts rightward to DD2 with supply curve remaining unchanged at SS0 as shown in panel A. This shift indicates that at any price the quantity demanded is more than before. Therefore, at price P0 now there is excess demand in the market equal to Q0 Q0 dash. In response to this excess demand, some individuals will be willing to pay higher price and the price would tend to rise. The new equilibrium is attained at G, where the equilibrium quantity Q2 is greater than Q0 and the equilibrium price P2 is greater than P0. Similarly, if the demand curve shifts leftward to DD1 as shown in panel B, at any price the quantity demanded will be less than what it was before the shift. Therefore, at the initial equilibrium price P0, now there will be excess supply in the market equal to Q0 dash or Q0, in response to which some firms will reduce the price of their commodity so that they can sell their desired quantity. The new equilibrium is attained at the point F, at which the demand curve DD1 and the supply curve SS0 intersect, and the resulting equilibrium price P1 is less than P0 and quantity Q1 is less than Q0. Notice that the direction of change in equilibrium price and quantity is same whenever there is a shift in demand curve. Having developed the general theory, we now consider some examples to understand how demand curve and the equilibrium quantity and price are affected in response to a change in some of the aforementioned factors, which are also enlisted in chapter 2. More specifically, we would analyze the impact of increase in consumers' income and an increase in the number of consumers on equilibrium. Suppose due to a hike in the salaries of the consumers, their incomes increase. How would it affect equilibrium? With an increase in income, consumers are able to spend more money on the some goods. But recall the chapter 2 that the consumers will spend less on an inferior good with increase in income, whereas for a normal good with price of all commodities and taste and preferences of the consumers held constant. We would accept the demand for the good to increase at each price as a result of which the market demand curve will shift rightward. Here we consider the example of a normal good like clothes, the demand for which increases with increase in income of consumers, thereby causing a rightward shift in the demand curve. However, this income increase does not have any impact the supply curve, which shifts only due to some changes in the factor relating to technology or cost of production of the firms. Thus, the supply curve remains unchanged. In the figure 5.2a, this is shown by a shift in the demand curve from DD0 to DD2, but the supply curve remains unchanged at SS0. From the figure, it is clear that that at the new equilibrium the price of clothes is higher and the quantity demanded and sold is also higher. Now let us turn to another example. Suppose due to some reason there is increase in the number of consumers in the market for clothes. As the number of consumers increases, other factors remaining unchanged, at each price more clothes will be demanded. Thus the demand curve will shift rightwards, but this increase in the number of consumers does not have any impact on the supply curve, since the supply curve may shift only due to changes in the parameters relating to firms' behavior or with an increase in the number of firms, as stated in Chapter 4. This case again can be illustrated through Figure 5.2a, in which the demand curve DD0 shifts rightward to DD2, the supply curve remaining unchanged at SS0. The figure clearly shows that compared to the old equilibrium point E at point G, which is the new equilibrium point, there is an increase in both price and quantity demanded and supplied. Supply shift. In figure 5.3, we show the impact of a shift in supply curve of the equilibrium price and quantity. Suppose initially the market is in equilibrium at point E, where the market demand curve DD0 intersects the market supply curve SS0, such that the equilibrium price is P0 and the equilibrium quantity is Q0. Shifts in supply. Initially, the market equilibrium is at E, जो कि यहाँ पर है. Due to the shift in supply curve to the left, the new equilibrium is point G, as shown in panel A, and due to the rightward shift, the new equilibrium point F, as shown in panel B. With rightward shift, the equilibrium quantity increases and price decreases, whereas with leftward shift, equilibrium quantity decreases and price increases. Now, suppose due to some reason, the market supply curve shifts leftward to SS2 with the demand curve remaining unchanged, as shown in panel A. Because of the shift at the prevailing price P0, there will be excess demand equal to Q0 double dash or Q0 in the market. Some consumers who are unable to obtain the good will be willing to pay higher prices and the market price tend to increase. The new equilibrium is attained at point G, where the supply curve SS2 intersects the demand curve DD0, such that quantity 2 Q2 quantity will be bought and sold at price P2. Similarly, when supply curve shift rightward, as shown in panel B, at P0 there will be supply excess of goods equal to Q0 or Q0 dash. In response to this excess supply, some firms will reduce their price and the new equilibrium will effect attained at F1, where the supply curve as SS1 intersects the demand curve DD0, such that the new market price is P1, at which Q1 quantity is bought and sold. Notice the directions of change in price and quantity are opposite whenever there is a shift in supply curve. Now with this understanding, we can analyze the behavior of equilibrium price and quantity when various aspects of the market change. Here, we will consider the effect of an increase in input price and an increase in number of firms on equilibrium. Let us consider a situation where all other things remaining constant. There is an increase in the price of an input used in the production of a commodity. This will increase the marginal cost of production of the firms using this input. Therefore, at each price, the market supply will be less than before. Hence, the supply curve shifts leftward in the figure 5.3a. This is shown by a shift in the supply curve from SS0 to SS2. But this increase in input price has no impact. क्या करता है? कोई भी impact नहीं डालता है on the demand of the consumers, since does not demand it does not depend on the input price directly. Therefore, the demand curve remain unchanged. In figure 5.3a, this is shown by the demand curve remaining unchanged at DD0 as a result compared to the old equilibrium. Now the market price rises and quantity produced decreases. Let us discuss the impact on an increase in the number of firms, since at each price now more firms will supply the commodity. The supply curve shifts to the right, but it does not have any effect on the demand curve. This example can be illustrated by figure 5.3b, where the supply curve shifts from SS0 to SS1, whereas the demand curve remains unchanged at DD0. From the figure, we can say that there will be a decrease in price of the commodity and increase in the quantity produced compared to the initial situation. Simultaneous shifts of demand and supply. What happens when both demand and supply curves shift simultaneously? This simultaneous shifts can happen in four possible ways. First is both supply and demand curve shift rightwards. Both supply and demand curves shift leftwards. Supply curve shifts leftward and demand curve shift rightward. Supply curve shifts rightward and demand curve shift leftward. The impact on equilibrium price and quantity in all the four cases are given in table 5.1. Each row of the table describes the direction in which the equilibrium price and quantity will change for each possible combination of the simultaneous shifts in demand and supply curves. For instance, from the second row of the table, we see that due to a rightward shift in both demand and supply curves, the equilibrium quantity increases invariably, but the equilibrium price may either increase, decrease, or remain unchanged. The actual direction in which the price will change will depend on the magnitude of the shifts. Check this yourself by varying the magnitude of shifts for this particular case. In the first two cases, which are shown in the first two rows of the table, the impact on equilibrium quantity is unambiguous, but the equilibrium price may change, if at all, in either direction depending on the magnitudes of shifts. In the next two cases, shown in the last two rows of the table, the effect of price is unambiguous, whereas effect on quantity depends on the magnitude of shifts in the two curves. Impact or if of simultaneous shifts or on equilibrium. Shift in demand leftward, shift in supply leftward. Quantity decrease होगी, price may increase, decrease or remain unchanged. Shift in demand rightward, shift in supply rightward, quantity increase, may increase, decrease or remain unchanged. Leftward, supply is rightward, may increase, decrease और unchanged. प्राइस क्या होगा? डिक्रीज ही होगा. राइटवर्ड सप्लाई क्या है? लेफ्टवर्ड में इंक्रीज, डिक्रीज और रिमेन अनचेंज्ड. ये क्या होगा? इंक्रीज होगा. अब यहाँ पे आ जाते हैं प्राइस, क्वांटिटी. इसमें रिलेट शिफ्ट्स इन डिमांड एंड सप्लाई. इनिशियली द इक्विलिब्रियम एट ई वेयर द डिमांड कर्व DD0 and supply curve SS0 intersect. ये वाला पॉइंट ठीक है. In panel A, both the supply and the demand curves shift rightward, leaving price unchanged but a higher equilibrium quantity. In panel B, the supply curve shifts rightward and demand curve shifts leftward, leaving quantity unchanged but a lower equilibrium price. In figure 5.4a, it can be seen that due to rightward shifts in both demand and supply curves, the equilibrium quantity increases, whereas the equilibrium price remains unchanged. And in figure 5.4b, equilibrium quantity remains the same whereas price decreases due to a leftward shift in demand curve and a rightward shift in supply curve. Market equilibrium, free entry and exit. In the last section, the market equilibrium was studied under the assumption that there is a fixed number of firms. In this section, we will study market equilibrium when firms can enter and exit in the market freely. Here, for simplicity, we assume that all the firms in the market are in identical. What is the implication of the entry and exit assumption? This assumption implies that in equilibrium no firm earns supernormal profit or incurs loss by remaining in production. In other words, the equilibrium price will be equal to the minimum average cost of the firm. To see why it is so, suppose at the prevailing market price, each firm is earning supernormal profit. The possibility of earning supernormal profit will attract some new firms. As new firms enter the market, supply curve shifts rightward. However, demand remains unchanged. This causes market price to fall. As price fall, supernormal profits are eventually wiped out, यानी कि साफ हो जाते हैं. At this point, with all firms in the market earning normal profit, no more firms will have incentive to enter. Similarly, if the firms are earning less than normal profit at the prevailing price, some firms will exit, which will lead to an increase in price. And with sufficient number of firms, the profits of each firm will increase to the level of normal profit. At this point, no more firms will want to leave since they will be earning normal profit here. Thus, with free entry and exit, each firm will always earn normal profit at the prevailing market price. Recall from the previous chapter. इसको पढ़ेंगे अब कल.